Welcome to the You Person Podcast, a deep dive into how a new way of knowing is developing holistic, innovative leaders at all levels of the organization and changing the way business does business. I'm your host, James Tuzniau, and a big shout out to Lindsay Sterling for our highly evocative theme music, Between Twilight.
The current versions of capitalism have resulted in three significant divides, which is the ecologic, social, and spiritual. And I came across a sentence that, while I have known it and taught it, it just jumped out at me this morning. And that sentence is, self and culture and nature are liberated together or not at all. If you leave out science or you leave out art or you leave out morals, something is going to be missing. Something will get broken. And what the You Person operating system is about, kind of going off of some of the conversation we had yesterday afternoon, Daniel, is we're a whole. We're a complex ecosystem and we're a whole. And looking at the current versions of capitalism and what it's resulted in, you could actually say the current versions of capitalism have resulted in three significant divides, which is the ecologic, social, and spiritual. Those divides have separated nature and self and culture. And part of what the You Person project will open is a doorway to how do we liberate those? How do we presence the whole of what it truly is anyway? And then help people work from that place. And so as we're looking at co-creating, co-evolving a business that cares for the planet and develops the level of leader we need to have and develops people without sacrificing the art, the science, or the spiritual, or the morals, what they were saying, that becomes the search image. That becomes the Koan that we're working from. Yeah, working from and wanting to presence as a whole in the world. And so one of the things that I was curious about with Daniel, we had a conversation for the fragmentation. And one of the things, Daniel, that you said was, well, when you separate into departments, that's fragmentation. And then when you further separate inside those departments into accountabilities, that's further fragmentation and separation. And yet, to get somebody in business to think outside of that, because that's considered best practice, is part of what the Koan is. We're a whole company. We're on the same team. This is an enterprise that is a complex ecosystem. So how do we co-create and co-evolve something that has self and culture and nature be liberated all at once? And I think that if we talk about dreams and aspirations, I think that would be both the dream and the aspiration, is that we could create the kind of company that would allow a leader's unique signature, or a staff person or an employee or a member of the team, their own unique signature, because that's what it'll be to liberate all at once without job descriptions, without accountabilities. How do we start to talk about that? And that's what the You Person operating system is about. That's why actually developing 6.0 leaders who really, truly understand that, who really can, Daniel, I hesitate to say this, but who can think that, who can hold that, who can be present to that and work from that, or create and design from that.
And I might say it is being that can presence from that place. And it may seem like a subtle thing to say presence it versus think from it. And we're saying that if it's transrational, it's moving out of what we usually think of as a form of thinking. So it's maybe the best way to say it is that can presence that.
Yeah.
That would be all your ability to hold radical attention on your intention. The presencing happens because they do have an intention and return to the intention or hold the intention through all of it. And it governs the actions, begins to govern the actions that they take or the decisions that are made. If they're not holding that, it would be a different action and a different decision.
So this is where looking at business as a koan then is really, really important, not just an interesting idea that you can think about it that way, but to truly do what Shelley and Daniel are pointing to presence it. I'm going to read a sentence out of material that Daniel has gathered on koans. A practitioner strives to become one with a koan, open to it, penetrate it. The idioms vary, but they point to wholehearted, sustained exertion. So what we're saying in presencing it, it's not just being present to it. Presencing it means you're bringing forward a whole gestalt, a whole, and to be open to it, to continue to penetrate it, to drop in on it. It's one of the things we talk about and some of the skills we provide or help people to develop. That's what we're actually talking about. How do you effort without struggle and strain? But how do you open to it, penetrate it, and to be able to presence it?
I was just present to from the Kabbalah. How do you know if you showed up? There's effort and sweetness. So if it's effort but no sweetness, you didn't show up. If it's all sweetness but no effort, you didn't show up. I'm not sure how that applies, but that's what.
And I think that's what people in business miss is you got to put your head down and go to put effort into it. And what we're saying that's beyond some kind of work-life balance situation is the manner in which we approach business as a koan and the effort that we put into it. Actually, what has to emerge that has you know you're actually in the territory, you're in the field of it, is sweetness and effort will show up simultaneously. So it won't be, oh, I'm exhausted, or it won't be some big dramatic thing. It will be, I'm present, there's effort, and there's real sweetness because we're beginning to see a whole different way to move this forward.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the You Person podcast. If you are new to the podcast, please head over to our website, theyoupersonproject.com, where you can subscribe to the podcast, learn more about the project, or connect with our team. You can also reach us at hello@theyoupersonproject.com. If you think of someone who will benefit from listening to this podcast, please do share it with them. Thank you again, and see you on the next episode of the You Person podcast.